Hey everybody. So, very quickly, I just want to go through a few of the parts for your homework that's going to be due on Thursday. Please go ahead, read through this, and ask me if you have any questions, and then go ahead and go to the library of Sonic logos and check these out. There's a bunch of examples here. The main point is this. These are very brief melodies, very brief sounds that we've become to associate with a brand or a product or a particular idea. And you are going to be trying to create something very specific for your brand. Now, some of these use very particular timbres that are more digital. Some of these use instruments that we're familiar with to be able to kind of get a nostalgic or old world kind of sound. Some of these play around with acoustic space in a very interesting way. And some of these use associative sounds that we have a pretty good grasp of and a pretty big association with to be able to get you to think about something very specific. So you are going to be going to this link. You are going to be choosing a random company. Some of these are very scary. Some of these are very fun. If there's something else you really want to do, go ahead and just do that. Totally fine. But the point is that you're going to be creating 3 Sonic logos for this product. And you're going to be thinking about the materiality, the shape, the environment that points to this product. Now, some of you are a lot more familiar with Ableton. Some of you are not as familiar with Ableton. So I wanted to go through a few things about how you would maybe create this. Right now, I am on the looping view of Ableton. If I go ahead and press tab, or I go over to this button right here, I can toggle between the timeline and all of these loops right here. Now, I'm going to go ahead and create something very, very minimal, and I am going to automate some of the effects of it and combine a few things together to be able to get a Sonic logo. I always kind of start off with like a sine waveform because I like making my own instruments. Great, that's working out just fine. And I can go ahead and tweak all these things if I want. Wonderful. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to press record. Great. So that's looking good. I'm going to stop, and obviously this is not going to be as complex as what you're going to do, but maybe I want to change the release a little bit. Maybe I actually just want to make this I'm going to loop this really quick. A lot of the times in Ableton, if I'm working with one small section, I'll loop something, and that's by moving this thing, and then I'll go ahead and press this button, and it allows me to loop in this very small section. Okay, that's sounding a little bit more interesting. I'm also going to bring the release up. And then I'm going to increase the stereo spread a little bit. Okay, it's a little bit more interesting. Now, all these things that I'm doing are pretty fun to be able to get an interesting instrument. But one of the things that I want you to understand with Ableton is that I can automate each and every one of these different parameters. So for this one right here, this level, right? This level that says, I want this modulator to affect this modulator to affect this carrier frequency, I can actually change that value over time. How do I do that? Well, you'll see that I've clicked on it, and it's indicated that I've clicked on it by these 4 little points around this parameter wheel. And if I take my mouse and I move it all the way up to this little barbell right here, you'll see that I have these lines on my screen where I can add keyframes. And actually, if I click on different things, it immediately brings up whatever parameter I was looking at before. In this case, I'm going to go back to that one, and I'm just going to maybe automate this and see what it sounds like. Okay, it's starting to change the timbre over time, which is kind of cool. Maybe I want to change the release time as well. Maybe I want to change it down. Maybe I want to change the time. Cool. So I'm already starting to get something kind of interesting, or at least a little bit more interesting, right? Now I want to go ahead and bring an audio effect in. Maybe I can just bring in one that we were looking at in class. So I'm going to bring in the Redux, and I'm actually going to play around with automating this. So let me start off with 40,000 and move down, and let's see what this sounds like. Whoa, okay. So I'm already starting to get some pretty interesting effects here. Maybe I want to take some reverb and add that in as well. I'll just take the general reverb. And last, I'm going to bring in like an EQ. And what I actually want to do is I want to just modulate the EQ a little bit. So I am going to... Yeah, so I'll take that. And I'll go back over here. Great. Okay, I'm starting to get something a lot more interesting right here. And then I'm going to take this one and I'm going to make this into this type. And let me see if I can get one more like kind of interesting modulating effect. Okay, that's sounding pretty good. Let me get a resonator on there because I like resonance. Ugh. There we go. And I'm actually going to put the resonator before my EQ. And I'm going to put that before the reverb as well. Cool. So, realistically, by playing around with just a few automating effects, I can get some really, really interesting sounds pretty quickly. And obviously, this is not really done that well. Like, this is pretty low volume. I could really play around with the EQ right here and get this to sound a lot more robust while still kind of having this resonant, reverby effect that's kind of future-y with this filter sweep. But I want you to start to play around with how you could automate these effects to be able to create something interesting. Because a lot of these Sonic logos are doing just this. They maybe have, a synth and some samples layered on top of each other. And this is to say, like, look, I am changing something in the waveform, the redux, and all these things. But if I go to mixer right here and I go to track volume, I can actually change the volume of this over time, and I can stack these up on top of each other. And, I just pressed Command D to be able to do this. I'm actually going to change this to -7 right here. But maybe I want this one to come in a little bit towards the end, like that. Who knows? My point is, in this exercise, you're really going to be leaning into the timbre. You're really going to be leaning into the texture. And you're going to be really leaning into automating effects to be able to get something that is dynamic over space and time, pointing to both associative ideas, materials, textures, to be able to point to a really complex idea. I mean, that's the whole thing, right? You are using all of these things to use 5 seconds of audio to abstractly point to a very specific complex idea. Go ahead. I'm so excited to see what you guys have to make. Bye.